Okay, let's do it. So first of all, communication's essence today is far greater than we anticipate. And I think I'm not going to tell you about the fake news and everything else which is going on. So in that sense, it's really, really crucial to give your message out right in a way that you want it, in the sense that otherwise it will start living its own life, and it's just gonna twirl and spiral around without you having any actual influence over it. So I found a quote which is pretty good, and I think it's capturing everything which I think of communication as well. And it goes that effective communication is 20% what you know and 80% how you feel about what you know. So the emotion behind communication is probably everything. 20% are the facts and details, but that's the information everyone can find from anywhere, as we have access to the web. But extra 80% is what you put in and how you communicate it, which makes it either feel alive, feel positive, feel negative, whatever it is you want to tell with it, it's going to make that feeling which is going to stick. So that's the reason why I think when you do communication, it's really, really important to express your feelings about what you're communicating. And since you're doing your own business, one thing which I've always done when I'm mentoring startups is I always tell them that you need to be the ambassador of your own company or of your own idea. So that's actually expressing what you know and how you feel about what you know. So keep that in mind when you do communication. So rule number one, I put those things in rules because I thought it would be easier to follow. I hope it's followable, but let's see how it goes. So the first rule is to know your customer. I know that probably most people who have done business or who do business kind of know this by heart or have knowledge on how to do it, but this is a major thing that I see a lot of companies struggle with. They don't know their own customer. So what I mean under the customer is actually their gender, their age, demographics, ethnicity, interests, as well as wealth. You need to know if they're on the lower end of that ladder or on the higher end of it, because there's a big difference on how you approach communication to each and every block of these. For example, you know that women mainly like to have appetizers. You know, they want to have something that captures their eye and gives them emotion. Men are really practical. You give a fact. If it's good, it's good. If it's not, sorry, I'm moving on. Age is as well the same thing. For young people, it's one thing. For 20, 30 plus, it's the second thing. For 50 plus, it's the third thing. So you need to really know and understand what you're doing and how you're communicating to these age groups. So I really hope that each and everyone has done their own client persona. If not, then I suggest before you start doing any communication, it's for sales as well. The same thing, you need to have this data. But since we're talking about communication, I think you really, really ought to put real focus on creating the persona as precise as it's actually available. I understand that so many ideas are such to which you're just developing those. They don't have actual grounds, but then you have to just assume what's the possible client or who's the possible client who you're gonna target and who you actually want to go after. I would just jump out of the screen sharing and just see who has done client persona. Can I get hands up? Raise hand, you know? Yeah. Use the button on, if you go to participants, then you can choose the button raise hand so I can see a bit better. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it could be a lot better, but it's a start. So I guess this information should be valuable to you as well. That this needs to be done. All in all, like there's no question about it. And whether it's communication on a landing page, whether it's on Facebook, it's the same everywhere. And then you can actually kind of communicate and sell the stuff that you want to sell as well. But I'm going to jump back to the screen sharing so we can just move forward with it. Just a second. Okay. So if we jump on, then the next kind of place that we need to think is that we need to answer the right questions. From my side, I can tell from my perspective, when I go to a web page, I usually start looking for answers right away because I have questions in my head that need correct and fast answers to. Something triggered my attention. Most probably it was the, I don't know, call to action, it was the price, it was the picture, whatever it was. It caught my eye. I went to the landing page, and the next thing is I want answers to my questions. So you need to answer the right questions. There's a lot of mixtures of questions, but I am going to point out the main things that I would like to see that people answer or companies answer when they communicate to me as well. So here goes. There's the what, why, where, and when. So first of all, the what. It's important to know what is your product or service, and it needs to be clear from day number one. If you cannot write it out clear, and it's a bit messy and, you know, written in a really, let's say, long text block, etc., people are just gonna, you know, disregard your page and just go to a different place where they can find easier communication, which is said point blank read. So this is the first thing what you need to do. What is your product or service? If you can answer it in one sentence, that's the best thing you can do. If it takes 2 or 3, it's okay. But the shorter you can make it and the simpler you can make it, the easier it is for the customer to understand who and what you are. The next question is why. So you need to answer why is it useful to others? Because to me, it's the way that first, if I get the answer to what is it that I'm looking for or what I'm looking at? The next question is, why do I need it? Why do I need your product or service? So you need to answer, again, shortly, why is it useful to others? I think this is, again, it depends on the product or service. In some cases, it might be really difficult to put those things in short. But as I said, I can't put all those things in universal 5-point systems. So there needs to be some kind of basis to which you can adapt to. And I think most probably most ideas can adapt to this setup. Then there's the where. Where can it be used? Where is it working the best? Where can I find it? There's 3 where questions here because over the course of the landing page or the web page or overall communication, actually, there's going to be multiple where questions because people, I don't want to be kind of rough saying they're dumb, but people really want to be told where they can use it. And the questions need to be answered very specifically so that they can have as little space as possible to move away from the concept or the idea of your product or service. So for that case, I usually try to answer questions, where can it be used? And if you put a certain spot, for example, home, then again, the person kind of creates a connection with his or her home space and evaluates whether the what was significant enough for her. Now she's evaluating whether home and why is significant to her. So it's kind of a link which is tied together. You take the first step, you take the second step, and it goes on. So where is it working best is for products mainly, but it can be used for services as well, because the where question, especially working best, is because there are usually many varieties of products and services. And unless you can do the what like brilliantly and the why as well, they're going to start wandering around and thinking about alternatives in order to create, you know, this comparison between the other things to evaluate whether it's good enough or not. For example, I do it a lot of times. I kind of have an understanding of what might be the alternative, and then I just start to think, okay, the alternative costs about this, it's available this, it has these extras, etc., etc. And then I start to kind of think, how is this working better, or where is it working better compared to the other things which I could think of? So it's good to always kind of have this as a spare answer as well. And where can I find it? Usually is also something which can be, let's say, embedded in the first part of your landing page as well, just to have, again, proof that you are reliable. Because even if you answer what and why, if you say, for example, you have a partner who's going to resell it and their name is more credible than yours, then I think it's better to kind of hint it in the beginning rather than in the last block where you show your own partners. So when, again, this is something which is not mandatory, but I think you should kind of put focus on it because a lot of ideas are usable in a certain period of time. And once you kind of take away those subconscious risks that I can use it only in summer or whatever it is, and you answer the question like when do I need it and when can I buy it, etc., then you take away fears and again enlarge the positive impact which you can get out of answering these questions. So it's a bit overall, I understand this, but again, I must kind of stress out that it's really, really individual on the idea and the product which you're developing and doing, because in some cases it can be really complex and it's not possible to actually say it swiftly, like what, why, where, and when. Okay, so let's go forward. Rule number 3 is mind your language. And I would be lying if I would say that this isn't the biggest problem which I encounter when we do communication to customers. And this is really, really a big problem because there's a strict line between private conversations and business conversations. And when people start doing their own marketing, they don't tend to understand where the line goes. So I'm 100% sure that you have seen so many Facebook posts where there's like millions of emojis and you're gonna blow your brains out because you can't see the text between the emojis and it's like real stuff. It's really real stuff. So this is, I think, as most have seen this, I think this is the best example I can give you, like where you should mind your language. And talking about minding the language, the tone of voice is really important on how you approach your clients. So don't be familiar unless you're sure you can be, or if you decide to be familiar, you have to go all the way. And going all the way usually means if you start this string, you go it till the end, you don't change it back. So yeah, it can be so-so for some again, but I've seen so many times that companies start this familiarizing and then they pull the brakes and start going really, really, strict and diplomatic. And then like the customers freak out because they don't understand who's communicating behind it. Because before they could engage, it was their tone of voice and they were familiar with it. And if you block it like all of a sudden and you change it to diplomatic, then they will back away and probably your kind of focus group will distance away from you as well. But I have a good hint regarding this. Before you start up or start making any communication, everyone has a good example or experience from a company, e-store, whatever it is, where they have bought something or engaged with, I don't know, personnel, and they've had a really good experience. So let's do again the quick part. I would like to get to the chats again and see if I can get your answers quickly. Like, for example, hint me some companies that you really feel engaged to, which kind of excite you each time you communicate with them. Okay, we got 2 more. Okay, Monzo, I don't know. HubSpot, I know. Tesla. Anton, do you have personal experience with Tesla?
Let me unmute. Yeah, I was renting it a few times in California. Okay. And yeah, as soon as I started using like apps and different things, then all the time they follow up over email or through other channels with some interesting things and tweaks and so forth. So basically, like the car is like a toy for adults.
But how was their tone of voice? Were they familiar? Were they diplomatic or somewhere in between?
I think maybe like more kind of engineers to engineers, but okay. At least this is how I feel it. But
okay,
yeah.
So they were kind of specific to you as well.
Probably. I don't know like how they communicate to other guys, but
And
from my
this is
perspective,
personal
yeah.
approach. So even if they do it to the others differently, it actually doesn't matter. It's the matter of fact how they kind of talk to you in that sense. Okay, let's ask one more. Jurgita, can you tell me about Suunto?
Yeah, hi. So they were really friendly. I've chatted with them on Facebook and on Instagram actually several times.
You
They
have
are
to
like
come
working
closer.
on
We can
basic.
hear you quite well.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah. So as I said, I've chatted with them on Facebook and also on Instagram, and they're friendly. They're using emojis. So it's basically just like chatting with a friend. And even if you have, some
Sorry
kind of
to interrupt. You're
problem.
still too far away.
No, quite close actually. Maybe my computer isn't really good at this point.
Okay, there seems to be something wrong because we hear you quite from the distance. Sorry for that. Let me see. Okay, we have Lolita. What about Oatly? Lolita?
Yes, hi. Do you hear me?
Yeah, just fine.
So basically, I feel very entertained every time I use their product. That makes me intrigued how they can keep on going with entertainment like that, so it almost never repeats.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell the others what Oatly exactly is so they know the background to it?
Oatly is a brand which makes alternative milk and
Okay.
other products from milk, like cheese or cream, but I usually use just oat milk for my coffee, basically. And I find fascinating that they use a lot of language in their communication. They do actually the very opposite. Instead of writing short, they write long. But it's all absolutely all right. That's their characteristics. There's a lot of text everywhere.
Do you, if it's long, do you kind of feel that the longness is it like well written, or is it just the use of words which makes it interesting to read?
Both. Of course, because there's a lot of humor, they keep me engaged from the very beginning, and it's cool to read till the very end because you know that there's going to, at the end, there will be something for me.
Okay, thank you. So we heard some examples, but mostly what I could pick out from this is that again, it's not tailor-made because they can't know exactly who each and every one of you is, but it's still kind of touching you in a certain way. So they kind of know who the audience might be, and it's directed so that they can address the audience which they feel might be the main user to it. But okay, let's go forward to this. I will start screen sharing again so you guys can see. Okay, so the next part is copy. So you can't live without the right words. As we heard before, some do it long, some do it short, but overall it's the same thing. And copy is the essence of all of this. So a good copy is something that sells before you finish reading. At least it is to me, for example. I have the sense that if it's poorly written, I usually can't bear to read it till the end because I already start thinking about the structure of the copy. And if the message is already kind of mixed up in the beginning, maybe it's just my issue, but I don't want to waste my time too much on bad copy. And I understand that this is kind of my level or my filter, which I'm looking for in the companies that I interact with. So a good copy should be also smart, but not cocky. Also mild, but not flirty. So again, we avoid two kind of edges of one side and the other. But what you need to keep in mind is in some cases, you need to be edgy. So again, as to each and every rule, there are exceptions, and some companies kind of have to use the exceptions in order to make it through and, you know, gain the trust and the attention of the customers as well. But the actual copy, kind of my bottom line should be somewhere in between. So you sense that there's something a bit flirty, but it's not flirty. And you sense it's proud, but it's not cocky proud. So it has to be somewhere kind of borderlining here and there. Copy really needs to be used right, because I've seen a lot of good copy placed in wrong positions. And the wrong positioning is something that I really feel that is bad work of the marketers, basically. So Ottomar in the end will also take over, and when he starts his own part about landing pages, I think he will share as well through some examples that I saw he put in. What are the good examples that you can do and you can use? Another thing is, don't change things that are by default done. With copy, there's this creative overflow that usually comes when people feel the vibe and they start changing stuff that actually doesn't need to be changed. For example, the call to action names. I've seen that really many times. That companies start using, for example, instead of buy, they write something, would you like to order? But people usually kind of trigger to certain words and sentences that already have been used so many times, as well as contact forms, etc., etc. If you mix those things up and make those like really tough and hard to follow and change the names, then most probably you will lose the customers as well, because they can't understand what you're really wanting them to do. And one of the best advices is that if you can't write the good copy, you have to hire a person to do it. And it's really no joke that copywriters are one of the highest paid, or maybe the highest paid marketing persons in the segment, because a person who can play around with words and really make it engaging and kind of join pictures and content and everything else together and make the people want to purchase and find out more, those people are really hard to find. I can actually say that within the course of my 13-14 years in marketing, I've so far seen one person who could play around with words like he was a magician. Like really, he was a real magician with words. And I could never understand how it came so easily to him, because to me, I can write copy, but playing around with words and having the vocabulary that he had seemed something mind-blowing. And with him, we did some big campaigns to Pan-Baltic companies. And I can say that the work was like 3 times easier with him than it was with other partners who did copy. And it brought back results as well. So for example, we had 2 similar customers with mostly similar building with the structure framing of the landing page. One had the guy make the copy, the other one had another person make it. And the product was also kind of more or less the same, as well as the pricing, and one did 4 times better than the other one, and you can guess which one made better. So you have to choose the right words. So rule number 4, if you can't write it, show it. Guys, quick question. Is my Zoom bar hiding some of the parts here in the text?
No.
No? Cool. Then it's only my kind of view which is showing here. So what I mean, if you can't write it, show it, I mean that you can use wingmans to make the copy and the communication really kind of move forward. And images allow to boost or put emphasis on text. And this is something, again, that can go from one edge to the other, meaning people start to use it too much, or they don't use it at all, and they hope that the words only make the difference. But the real combination to communication is using images with text. For example, if you're trying to sell emotion, then it's wise to put an emotional photo next to the text that you want to actually boost. And this is, again, a line of business that designers know well how to do, but it's something worthwhile to keep in mind, that if you want your kind of message to thrive, then you need to find the right images to go with them. It's not only images, it's not only text, it has to be a combination of both. Another thing which I'm not 100% sure how it's in Latvia, but I know that I have had some cases with communication for a big company in Latvia where they told me that they would really like to avoid Asian people in their visuals. So I guess when you use images next to text, you should also pay attention to ethnicity, because in some regions it might backfire. And again, I think that if we look for a message and we read it and we have a picture to it, then we would really like to feel that we are the ones in that picture, if the picture kind of, you know, supports the text or of the communication. So in that sense, it makes real kind of logic sense that you have to kind of match those things too as well. And one thing which is also kind of overwhelming in communication is that English and local language are mixed used. And this is something I suggest to overview as well. In some cases, it might be usable, but in most cases, I suggest, like, if you're going local at first, use local. If you're going to multiple countries, you can basically put English below or something like that, but you should, or just basically stick to English if you know that your market is outside your local country. But this is something, the mix matching is something that can backfire as well. And if I look at, for example, in Estonia, we have some local groups in Facebook who are, let's say, posting those pearls which they find on media regarding textual parts and visual parts, then most of the times roast comes from those who are mix matching basically texts, or who are failing hard on visuals. So again, not to only be dully in my own presentation, let's quickly do so that we those who have hands raised, can you put them down? For example, two Linas, Jurgita. Let me see if someone else has. No, 3 persons have hands up right now. Okay, Jurgita, you too. So in order to kind of understand at what point you people are right now, can I have hands up who already have a landing page with actual copy, visuals, etc.? I'll give a few moments just to. So hands up goes from participants, and then there's on the right hand side, there's the raise hand. Okay, so I think we're mostly done, probably, I hope. I would say there's not so much. I was anticipating quite more, to be really honest. So, okay. So basically, you can take the hands down. I have some kind of overview what the current status is. So what my idea is that then I know kind of how to address the forward information as well. So you can kind of gain most of it. And as you know, you're going to make a one-pager. No, sorry, not a one-pager. Jana will want to correct me on that. A landing page soon. And I hope you can take this information as well and kind of build those things into the landing page you're going to make. So let's move forward. I'm going to share the screen again so we can have a look on here as well. Okay, so rule number 5 is if you can't show it, film it. And I know it's easier to say than do, because most people think that they can't actually make video. But this is something where I would really, really like to kind of stress out that it's actually as simple as this. Everyone has a phone, and nothing is stopping you from making high quality videos that actually can be used at the initial stage for whatever purpose you want. So I'm going to show you just some keywords which I wrote down for myself, but I think it's interesting for you as well. So it has been kind of tested out that 1 minute of video is worth around 1.8 million logical words that you can generate, and it's taken into context regarding the background, the coloring, scenery, etc., etc., etc. So if you're thinking about basically a landing page, which has, I don't know, 5 to 8, 10 blocks of information, you can't give all the information out that you really, really want to. But if you have a minute worth, 1.8 million different words, then it's not that difficult to understand why you should put focus on video as well. Plus, 80% of the people who browse web use or purchase or view video as well. So that means most of the people are already used to video, and it's easier and it's cheaper to obtain information through that. And I can tell you, for example, if you make an advertisement in a video format, and if you put beside a print ad, which you can see, or maybe it's a still digital ad that you're going to show on web. And if you show it again to people in 1 month's time, 85% will remember what your video was about after they see a couple of seconds, but only 10 or 15% will remember the static image that they saw as advertisement. So there's a big difference on how it's going to be remembered in the future as well. And we all know that we have TikTok, we have Snapchat, we have everything else, which is basically video with filters and add-ons. So there's no point of keeping out the video as well. And what I really like, sorry, I know I'm in video business as well, but this is the part where I feel like I can give you the, let's say, the backstage information, which usually doesn't make out to the customers in large, is that with video, there are certain places where you can go and get easy access. For example, Fiverr. You can have animated stuff and etc. And it doesn't cost much. And there's loads more as well. But with those things, again, you can create a certain image of your own company, which will make you look further down the road than you actually might be. And to me, with startups, the main thing is that usually startups start to market too late, because marketing needs to be started in the phase where you might not be ready with the product or service, but you need to already generate the buzz for that moment when you launch it, that you have already the interest and people start actively engaging with you. If you start doing it once you're at 90, 95%, most probably it's already too late, and it's going to take a lot of time to build this community up, which is going to engage with you or come along with you. So in that sense, video is something which is easily purchased or made, and you can already generate original content. And we all like to see this original content because we've seen all the contents, or mostly the contents that go viral. And if you start generating duplicate stuff, it's going to be boring and people don't want to look at it. So the more you put yourself, your company, your emotions out there, I guess the more you're going to get feedback from the community as well and start building them up. If your idea is good, if you're energetic, if you're an ambassador to your idea, they can feel it. Those who cannot probably are not your customers, but you will get those who feel you. So that's the version why I suggest using video would be one of the wisest things you can do as well, in sense of marketing and in sense of putting on the homepage as well. Rule number 6 is no puzzle games. This is, most of these rules are stuff which you kind of actually see a lot when you look at marketing and communication, but there's a certain logic to stuff. So you can't jump and walk at the same time, basically. There's a logical way, sorry for the typo, there's a logical way to start a conversation. And there's this building up, you know, you build up from hello, and then you go forward and forward and forward. You can't skip basically, for example, if you go to a customer and say, hello, listen, the invoice is going to be 2660. Here's the invoice. They're going to go. But if you're saying, hey, I see you took interest in us, here's a little overview of what we do. It's a logical way to kind of, you know, go forward. And usually when landing pages are done, the logic and the conversation, let's say, build up is forgotten. So try to keep that in mind. And also, again, this is the best practice way. go to the web pages or the services that you value and see how they communicate you, because personal experience is something that usually generates good ideas. And if you know that something is working on you, you most probably can assure that it's going to work on your customers as well, or clients. So there's no shame in taking some bits and pieces from other competitors or good, let's say, experiences, but you need to keep those in mind, that you don't start building stuff up and then assume it's going to work, but then you skip a few steps and it kind of doesn't work, and then you're thinking why it doesn't work. Okay, so the next thing is, again, something which I've done too little, but I've improved myself a lot during due time. I've assumed stuff, but I've A/B tested. For example, you can do 2 landing pages, or you can test different kind of copies and see how they work and how they kind of engage people. So with the logic as well, you can do one logic and you can do another one as well, but it needs to be kind of controlled environment how you test those logics in order to understand, because with some, again, I don't know exactly each and everyone's idea to the details, but there are some cases where some kind of products or services don't allow you to use the main logic or the default logics, if you say so. So in that case, you have to find the right pattern, how to communicate or how to contact the person, like how the flow goes. So in that sense, I've usually done so that I've done a couple of different versions, and then I test it out with different ads and see which one works best. Usually the one that works best stays, the one that doesn't goes out. And if some fragments work from one and from the other, then I just try to see how to mix match those together. And again, in most cases, keep in mind that the client is used to default, so you don't have to reinvent the communication. So if you start thinking about communication wise, if the normal conversation will go from hello to this is us, this is what we provide, then there's no need to put something in between, because the customers and clients are usually not kind of, they're not used to stuff like that. And you have to value their time as well in communication. If you make it too long, you're going to lose them. If you make it too short, they don't have enough information. So it has to be this tender line or fine line in between of those. Rule number 7 is tell them what to do. And now we come back to the initial part where I was telling that usually clients and customers want them to be told what to do. Because I see myself as well, although I'm in marketing and I'm actively doing it, so I'm just not telling of stuff that I did like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I see that I do a pattern when I go to the web as well. And I really like that when companies tell me like, this is the step, do this is the step, do that, because it helps me save time. And it's the same for everyone. At least I hope so. So all is not the same when it comes to call to action. And this is what you need to keep in mind, that due to the matter of fact that you are a startup, some have gone further, some are not there yet, but you have to assess whether your client is ready to jump in or not. In some cases, you can't ask them to buy anything yet. If it's too, let's say, you don't have 3D images or you don't have any specifics, then you can't ask them to buy, but you can ask them to sign up. Or you can tell them to ask you something about the product or service in order to engage. But it's always really, really vital to assess where your client is at the point that you're talking to them, and where you are in the, let's say, roadmap to 100%, so you know which communication you need to do. And this is, again, something which you need to keep in mind by yourselves, that once you evolve on this roadmap to 100%, then you need to change communication as well. Because once something changes from your side, it needs to show out the same way to the audience as well. So it's easy to, let's say, universally tell this, but it's, again, the sense that you need to have when you kind of process all the information that you have from your own product or service. buy, ask, and sign up are all good, but they need really an actual context. So if you make communication or copy or whatever it is you're doing with texts and engagements, you have to see that if it's, for example, let's do it so. Companies usually think that, okay, I'm at this phase, for example, I'm at 80%, I already need to start to pre-sell, and they focus on the buy instead of the signups. And then comes the place where you lose track, because customers probably might not be ready to buy. So the communication needs to have the right context, and its context basically comes from the status that you're in. So use buy, ask, sign up, whatever it is that you want to use as call to action buttons or textuals. Use it only when you're certain right now. We took over a mail base, which basically is, I think it was 30,000 contacts. And the way it was done before is so that there was always a buy button behind each and every text block. It was always buy, 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 buy. And people didn't engage. And we changed it because we knew that we had problems with stock and they weren't available to buy the things that we offered. And we changed them to ask for availability, basically. And the engagement went up 20% from the first email. So through that, we actually found out that we were asking them to do the wrong thing. So it's a lively example on how you should kind of assess the situation and choose the correct, let's say, question or command that you want to give them. And actually, that's it, because I was trying to make it as short as possible in order not to kind of overcrowd the information from your side, because I know that you're going to have a pretty long, not pretty long, 1 hour worth of webinar ready when it comes to landing pages. So I wanted to keep, let's say, a small gap in between so you can just have a coffee or rest your head and just focus on those things as well. So let's do so. Can we do a live questions and answers block? Does anyone have something to ask? This is the moment you can ask for your own idea. Okay, Eric, what about B2B approach? Good question. Eric, this probably needs to have more details to it, meaning what's the idea and what's the product service and who's the buying part. But for B2B, from my experience, mostly it's the marketing should be a cushion to which the salesperson can basically hold on to. Because my best experience from B2B sales comes from basically personal contacts. And the B2B landing was actually the one that provided just the facts and figures in order to, in order to give, let's say, backup to the words that I was saying in person. But if we talk about overall B2B approach, I think what you need to kind of figure out is the messaging needs to be more detailed and concrete rather than to the B2C, because they already know what they want, what they need, and you have to kind of answer different questions from their side. And the tone of voice really needs to be corporate in that sense. Ideal length of video from Jorge. Okay, depends. For social media, if it's a short, it's 15-20. I suggest it not to be more than 45 to 60 seconds. And if it's longer than that, then just be aware that initial attention span For example, in social media, it's like 3 to 4 seconds. So if you don't start off strong, there's no point in putting 3-4 minute videos up there. So in that sense, you really need to think how to kind of market lengthy videos. Either it's a teaser which you make out of the long one or whatever it is. But I really suggest kind of to strictly keep to the short ones unless you really have content which needs like longer time span. Yeah, Dennis told me that Ottomar is not going to be alone with the next webinar. It's Dennis also from Webimajutus who's going to co-host, if I'm not mistaken. So let me see if I have any more questions. Nope. Anyone? You still have a couple of minutes to ask anything about Eric, I'm gonna write you in direct about the links, which maybe could be useful to you if it's okay. So again, guys, this is your chance to ask. Of course, I'm gonna be on Slack as well, so you can ask on the marketing side, but really kind of just shoot. It's the way to go, and you have the kind of Zoom channel open, so shoot. Okay, what do we have? How to approach going global with product. Okay, so Mighty asked how to approach going global with product. Do country by country or country by blocks? I really suggest to assess by the nature of the product. In some cases, it can go country by country. In some cases, it can go country by blocks. But to me, it always comes down to the marketing budget. If you don't have money to do it country by country, then you have to kind of fragment it down. Because, for example, stuff that you're going to do in Estonia costs like 3 times as much in Finland and 5 times as much in Sweden. So those are the numbers. Like it needs to be done right, and it needs to be in real accordance to your marketing budget in that sense. Celia asked, how about communication to new product when intellectual rights are not protected yet? It's a matter of your gut feeling, basically. If you have the patent kind of right on the way, for sure, who else is going to pick it up? They need time to get the patent through as well. So in that sense, you have a head start. But it's again, so for example, I'm not sure if it was in Latvia as well, but for example, in Estonia, we had this cherry.ee. It was a fast auction, let's say, site or whatever. They didn't have anything, and we had flooding over new portals like that. But like they were the pioneers, and whoever's first in doing it the best, okay, kind of the successors or the, let's say, competitors will do something better because they will learn from you and have a different angle to it. But to me, it's always the thing that if you go first, you have the advantage of, let's say, giving something out for the first time. And the buzz and the feeling that you give is different. And if someone goes after you and finds out that, listen, hey, you know, I have this product and someone's going to search for competition, then they're going to compare to you and you have a longer track record than they do. So it's going to be tougher for them to kind of go in. Anya asks if any comments about cold emails to business. Yes, it's going to be tough for sure. First of all, finding the right person who's going to pull the trigger, because I've been doing business to business as well for the most of the time. I've been marketing. So in that case, my biggest problem is that once you think a person is the one who decides, it's actually not the person. So finding the right person is the biggest challenge. And if you find the right person, then it's actually the second part is putting your ideas down on digital piece of paper or in an email, basically, in a way that they really find value to it. So it's, again, copy plus finding the right person. Lena asked, what about when having multiple target users? You can
I actually clarified it like again, like later, because about like specific target users and the concept, basically.
Okay.
Well, the concept is this.
Okay.
Just
So
to give you,
everyone can see it's the two last chat comments that we have there. So I'm not going to read it out for the time being, but long story short is basically what you find in most cases. There's different tabs for different users. So if you're a professional, you use one tab. If you're a, let's say, a regular customer, you use another tab. So you can filter out specific information. And also in the long run, there are different ways to kind of use the data that's collected for revisiting customers to filter out already by default. So basically at the first point, when you're going cold, basically from start, I suggest, for example, you just, the first page is basically, I'm a professional, I'm a regular user, and you give options and they start choosing. And then you kind of filter out the information to the correct order, basically. I would do it this way again, but it needs a bit more, let's say, getting to know the idea and how it's proposally going to be presented. But I see, like right now, I don't see any actual versions of doing it differently or better in that sense. So I hope it kind of somewhat answered your question. Okay, so we have Alexei. It would be nice to dissect a real world example of bad communication. That's a tough one. But if I would choose from the recent ones, again, from Estonia, it's not 100% bad in sense of communication, but in sense of act plus communication, basically. We had Sportland, who was about to close all of their shops in Estonia due to COVID and shutdown of the centers. And what they did is they posted out a minus 50%, was it, sale? And people kind of flooded to the shops. So I know that it might like look so and so, and I can't assess today whether it was intentional or not, but it was a mixed message which was given out. So even if it was thought that the people are going to kind of go e-shopping, they came to the shops. So bad communication gone like totally wrong was that, whether it was intentional or not. Like no other kind of, let's say, reason to think differently. Okay, I'm gonna move forward as well. What do we have else? Okay, so most things are covered. I will PM to those who I have kind of seen that want private, but anyone else? We have 1-2 minutes left. Guys, come on. You can just solve a couple of problems that you have right now. No? Okay, guys. So I really thank you for the time. I hope you found valuable information from this. And I will talk to Jana as well if we can have the slides up somewhere, if they're useful to you as well. So, but I hope you enjoy. And just a sec, I'm trying to see if I can find Ottomar.